Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys being here, and it's a pleasure to see everyone here. It looks like we've got it going now. I do apologize for the technical difficulties that we had getting started here, but let's go.
Oh, what that aroma can do, brighter day for me and you. The best part of waking up.
The best part of waking up is having a job. And that is exactly what the hardworking men and women at J.M. Smucker Co. who bring you Folgers coffee won't have if they don't get the jab. Hey, Smuckers, consumers are now boycotting your 40 brands. Call 1-888-550-9555 and tell them everyone should have the freedom of choice.
Oh, with that aroma.
If everyone will please stand, or at least put their hands over their hearts for the playing of the national anthem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lately, USA is getting scarier. Half of the Americans I see all hate America. They hate the cops doing their best to take care of us and kneel for the flag and salt the soldiers that we're burying. I'm tired of the pissing and complaining. Why you living in America if all you do is hate it? You think it's brave to take a stand against the nation? Real bravery is dying for the right so you can say it. Dear America, what happened to Americans? Apparently no one's aware or cares that it's embarrassing. It's arrogance. Our greatest enemy was always slavery and terrorists, and now it's people in the country trying to burn the heritage. I can't help it, I just seem to see the world different. It ain't Republicans or liberals, it's mental illness. The internet is only interested in left opinions. Cancel culture's got more power lately than the First Amendment. If you don't like it, leave. We will not defund police. We don't want no riots in our neighborhoods or in the streets. We respect freedom of speech. We protect what we believe. We don't want nobody dead, so please do not tread on me. In America, your freedom ain't free. In America, got soldiers dying overseas. So America, you can say what we believe. My America, I won't ever take a knee. Our freedom is the reason you can disrespect our flag. If my stars and stripes offend you, then I'll help you pack your bags. America, does anybody know what the hell happened to the Patriots? Lately this nation is so ashamed and hating itself. Did everyone forget that people died to pay for this? Ungratefulness, United States gave everything to you just to help. I just want to celebrate Thanksgiving with my family. I don't need your help to understand it was a tragedy. Can I just be thankful for my country eating happily without you trying to guilt me for the genocide and casualties? I can't help it, I just seem to see the world different. It ain't black or white, it's conflict designed by the system. I don't need your pronouns, all I see is men and women. Kids are taking pills for fun while people can't afford prescriptions. If you don't like it, go. Hate it, then don't call it home. We don't need no violence, got no time for all you radicals. Screw your status quo, we're not animals. I won't kneel for the anthem, cause the flag is what I'm standing for. In America, your freedom ain't free. In America, got soldiers dying overseas. So America, you can say what we believe. My America, I won't ever take a knee. Our freedom is the reason you can disrespect our flag. If my stars and stripes offend you, then I'll help you pack your bags. America, you can hate the government and still love the country. The fundamental values of America are concrete. Republicans and liberals are dumb, to put it bluntly. They're labels that they use to create chaos and corruption. You can know the history and still be proud of where you're from. Every flag around the world is covered in a little blood. We started out United States divided is what we've become. If home is where the heart is, you should show America some love. In America, your freedom ain't free. In America, got soldiers dying overseas. So America, you can say what we believe. My America, I won't ever take a knee. Our freedom is the reason you can disrespect our flag. If my stars and stripes offend you, then I'll help you pack your bags. America.
Rip'n Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rip'n Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Coming to you from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness. This is the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to another episode of the DarkWolf's Den Radio Show. This is a special new episode we're starting, a new series we're starting called the Freedom Flame series. We're going to be doing it just a little different than our Wednesday night shows, of course. And we are glad to see every last one of you guys here. We are going to be talking tonight about a stolen democracy, and clearly in our lifetime we've seen this country go to something that none of us would have ever dreamed it would have. But how did we get here? You'd be surprised by that answer, or maybe you wouldn't. But we're going to go over all that and more here in just a moment. But first, let's see who all we have joining us over here in our chat room. And we've got quite a few guys. Hey guys, glad to see everyone here. Like I said a moment ago, Michael Fontaine with a thumbs up. Michael Fontaine over in the DarkWolf's Den Show chat says, been waiting for a minute to say thank you, Jerry and AJ, for the birthday shout out for Parker. She had a great day. Well, I am so wonderfully glad to hear that she had a great day. It is our honor here at the Rip'n Rabbit Hole to do that for you, Michael. Absolutely. Sandy B in the house says hello Sandy. Earl Taylor, hey everyone, number one today. That is right, Earl Taylor, you are number one in the Rip'n Rabbit Hole chat today. Congratulations and top hats off. JoJo's with the skull and bones. Absolutely, they could very well be one of the thieves involved in tonight's episode. We don't know. And that's about all we have over in the Rip'n Rabbit Hole chat and the DarkWolf's Den Show chat. So go ahead and hit that share button and share this out everywhere and let people know what we are doing over here. And we appreciate every last one of you guys, whether you're listening over on the two YouTube channels, both the Rip'n Rabbit Hole, our radio network, as well as the DarkWolf's Den Show YouTube channel, or if you're listening worldwide on Rip'n Common Sense Radio Network, the RipNRabbitHole.com, any of these sources, we're glad to have every last one of you guys along for the ride. And before we can dig into the patriotic-themed episode, we have two more fun little segments to do. The first of which we call Today in History. On this day in 1954, the Nobel Prize for Literature is awarded to a classic American author, Mr. Ernest Hemingway. That occurred on this day in 1954, and that is today's segment of Today in History. And of course, a classic American author. And speaking of America, that brings us up to our next segment, a segment which we call
Say what?
And of course, this is our quote of the day section, and the quote of the day today actually comes from the Star Spangled Banner, but it's a line you may not be familiar with. And I quote, "The land of the free as long as it is the home of the brave," end quote. Once again, that is a line from a verse of the Star Spangled Banner, and that is today's segment of
Say What?
I don't know about you guys, but when I hear that song, I get extremely patriotic. And, you know, I love this country. I really do. But what I've seen and what I've experienced in this country lately is nothing shy of horrible. I was trying to ride a bus today, and unfortunately, they have a ridiculous mask mandate. And unfortunately, also for me, they refused to acknowledge or accept a medical exemption, which I'm sure, as you guys all know, is illegal at best, right? And Lord knows what else at worst. But I did get into a big argument with the bus station in Clarksville, Tennessee. I sure did. And I pointed out to them that they are breaking federal regulations by following other ridiculous regulations, mandates nonetheless, that are not laws, just mandates that do not go over exemptions like medical exemption for the Americans with Disabilities Act. But apparently the people of Clarksville, Tennessee, that run the bus station anyway, have no good idea what that is, and blatantly told me that they refused to acknowledge it. So yeah, let's hope that a good lawyer out there is listening tonight and knows what to do. If not, I will be going to discuss this with one very soon, that I assure you. But that's just one example of the problems we're seeing every single day in this country. And that's what happens when you stand up to these jackholes, is they just refuse you service. So I'd say, well, let's refuse them taxes then, right? If I can't use your service without being discriminated against, perhaps I don't need to pay your wages or be paying taxes to you either, right? There comes a time when we have to stand up, folks, but how did we get here? How did we get into such a mess? This actually started a long time ago, and it's something that we have only recently, I guess, began to realize how bad we've let it got as we the people, right? And it kind of relates to something that happened back in 2014. The audio bite we are about to hear here was actually recorded in 2015. So he will be speaking of something that happened a year prior at the time of the recording.
In Hong Kong, an extraordinary protest began. Protest begun by students, literally high school and college students, elementary school students. Then their parents felt a little embarrassed that they had let the kids work so hard. The parents showed up as well. And the protest was about a law. And the law was proposed by China. The law was to determine how the governor of Hong Kong would be selected. And the law said the ultimate aim was the selection of the chief executive by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures.
Apparently, they're just as sneaky with their wording in China as they are in America, because on the surface, that sounds good, right? It sounds like, you know, it would be what it's supposed to be. A body of people to determine nominees. That sounds normal. However...
Okay, so the idea was there's a two-step process. The first step was nomination, and then the second step was an election.
And that is much like, if not the same as, we have here in this country, right?
And the nominating committee would be comprised of about 1,200 people, which means out of 7 million people, that is 0.02% of Hong Kong.
Now, keep that number in mind, 0.02%.
Right, now 0.02%, as you can see, is a really tiny number, right? Really, really small. If you thought about it relative to all the people in Hong Kong, it would look something like this. This tiny little corner is 0.02%. So 0.02% get to pick the candidates that the rest of Hong Kong gets to vote among.
So what sounded like a good idea at first, once you break down the logic of it, is not very good of an idea at all. Only a very small percentage picks the nominees, and the nominees is what's the most important part. If you've got two corrupted nominees, it doesn't matter who you're actually voting for, you're still choosing bad either way. In America, we used to say we're choosing the lesser of two evils. This time we chose the more of two evils, though I don't believe that America chose anything. We all know that Joe Biden stole that election with the Democrats.
And the protest was because the fear was this filter would be a biased filter. The claim was that the 0.02% would be dominated by a pro-Beijing business and political elite, so 99.98% would be excluded from this critical first step, would be dominated, obviously, of producing a democracy responsive to China only.
Which, of course, is very good for China. And you would see something like that as something that, you would expect China to do. But it wasn't China's idea, believe it or not. Where the idea came from is much more scary.
Okay, now it turns out the Chinese stole this idea from America. Don't worry, there was no patent or copyright, so there's no IP violations going on here. But they stole the idea from an American, maybe the greatest political philosopher in America, a man named Boss Tweed. Boss Tweed, the head of the Tammany Hall political party, used to say, I don't care who does the electing, as long as I get to do the nominating.
Well, of course, if I wanted certain things done, if I wanted my corrupt system in the way that I liked it, then if I pick the nominees, well, it doesn't matter who you vote for because they're both on my side, right?
So this conception, this kind of conception of politics has an obvious logic to it, right? Because if you control the nomination, every candidate is going to worry what you, the nominator, think. So you practically control the candidate, whether or not you control the ultimate election. We can call that genius theory for destroying democracy, Tweedism.
Now, here's another vocabulary word that we may want to learn, and we may want to learn it really quick, and that, once again, is Tweedism. Which, as we see, is the ability for a very, very small group of people to pick the nominees for any race. And in that case, like I said a moment ago, doesn't matter what you vote for because I picked the nominees. They're both on my side. And at that point, the representatives are no longer representing the people. They're representing the nominator.
Tweedism. Any two-stage process where the Tweeds get to nominate.
And I really like over here in chat, Tyrone Jackson says, in a free society, or quote, in a free society, the state does not administer the affairs of men. It administers justice among men who conduct their own affairs. Well stated. That's a quote from Walter Lippmann, and I could not agree more with that. Hello, Prairie Fire. Glad to see you. Tyrone Jackson, glad to see you over here. Alva Yoder, welcome. Glad to see you stopping in. Sandy B said 12/5/55 to 12/20/56. Montgomery, Alabama. Certain people boycotted riding buses. It worked. They stood united, as we should, as a group, and I fully agree.
And then the rest get to select is Tweedism, and the consequence of Tweedism, obviously, is to produce a system responsive to Tweeds only.
And of course, in today's day and age, the Tweeds would be the corporatists and the elites, the ones with the big money, the ones that are funding everything, the money funders, as Rex Baird puts it over on Leak Project, or the MFers, as he references them, money funders.
Now, Tweedism was practiced not just in the North, not just in New York, it was practiced in the South too. Texas, 1923, practiced Tweedism. By law, in 1923, Texas passed a statute that said in the Democratic primary, only whites could vote. Only whites could vote.
Remember, that is this same Democratic Party that today claims to care about minorities, which is, of course, absolutely ridiculous to believe that the Democratic Party has ever cared about minorities. If you go and look at their track record, this is not speaking from a party line, understand, this is speaking from a historical line. Not only in 1923 in Texas, but they've done many, many things against minorities. And then at a time for election, they try to jump on the stage and say, we care, we care, we care. And they only care until the end of election time. I'm just saying that's what I'm seeing.
Blacks could vote in the general election if, of course, they could get registered, given all the barriers to registration. But only whites could vote in the Democratic primary. And, of course, back then, hard to imagine, but back then the only party that mattered was the Democratic Party in Texas. So in this two-stage process, blacks were excluded from the first stage, 16% of Texas excluded from this critical first stage, with the consequence obviously producing a democracy responsive to whites only.
Clearly and blatantly excluding 16% of the population when it comes to choosing the nominee. Not voting for, but choosing who you're going to vote for to begin with.
Now those cases are obvious to us. Everyone looks at that and says, there's something obviously wrong with those so-called democracies to set up their structure in that way. So why don't we see it here?
Well, who's to say that we don't see it here on American shores, right? Just because the general population has had it hid from them for so long doesn't mean that it is not happening right under our noses.
We take it for granted in the United States that campaigns will be privately funded. But we need to recognize funding is its own contest.
That's right. Funding is its own contest. And this is where the majority of the problems start to come in, right here.
Funding is its own primary. We have the voting system where people vote, but in the first stage to that, there is a money primary that determines which candidates are allowed to run in those voting elections. Now, that money primary takes time. Members of Congress and candidates for Congress spend anywhere between 30 and 70% of their time dialing for dollars. This is an old telephone, you might not recognize this, but dialing for dollars, calling people all across the country to get the money they need to run their campaigns or to get their party back into power.
Which, once again, we've been so used to this type of system that seems pretty normal to us, right? But there's a majorly fatal flaw in this, if you haven't noticed already.
B.F. Skinner gave us this wonderful image of the Skinner box, where any stupid animal could learn which buttons it needed to push for its sustenance. This is a picture of the life of the modern American congressperson.
I love how they just compared every single congressperson to an animal with an extremely low IQ. That sounds about right.
As the modern American congressperson comes to learn which buttons he or she needs to push to get the sustenance he or she needs to make his or her campaign successful. This is their life, and it has an effect.
It has a huge effect on who ends up both in the candidacy as well as in spots that are supposed to be open to anybody. However, as we're starting to see, anybody's not really that true, is it?
Each of them, as they do this, develop a sixth sense, a constant awareness about how what they do might affect their ability to raise money. They become, in the words of the X-Files, shape-shifters.
He uses the word shapeshifter. I use the word immoral piece of trash, but I guess, tomato, tomato. But it's been a long time that these folks no longer care about their citizens or those that work to vote for them or those under them. They only care about the constituents under them that can fill their pockets. And that's why you see these politicians all the time saying, oh no, I would never force the mask on my constituents, or I would never force my constituents to get something put in their body that they don't want, or be forced to induce a medical procedure that they didn't want. And then once the primary or the voting or whatever is all said and done, and they're in the office and they can do what they want, they turn around and do the exact opposite of everything they had promised to do. Because why? Because they are no longer accountable to you. They're accountable only to those that are filling their coffers. And it turns out you and I don't make enough to fill their coffers.
As they constantly adjust their views in light of what they know will help them to raise money, not on issues 1 to 10, but on issues 11 to 1,000. Leslie Byrne, a Democrat from Virginia, describes that when she went to Congress, she was told by a colleague, quote, always lean to the green. And to clarify, she went on, he was not an environmentalist.
Always lean to the green. They tell each other blatantly in Congress. And that causes a lot of issues, even for those that want to do the right thing, right? If you don't lean to the green, if you don't play their game, you probably aren't going to make it more than one term in Congress.
So this obviously is a primary too. It's the money primary. It's not a white primary, it's the green primary. It's the first stage in a multi-stage process to select the candidates who will represent us. So if this is the structure, we should interrogate who are the funders.
And that's information that we rarely, if ever, are made privy to, is who these funders, these MFers, these money funders really are. And even if we are made privy to them, see, what I think we should do, like George Carlin said. All the Congress people should have to wear jackets with all their sponsors on, like NASCAR jackets, right? Then we'll know who they're lying for. Like the fact that a majority of Congress right now are also sitting on boards of, medical manufacturer companies, vaccine companies, all these companies that are running what's going on in our society and being forced down our throats. Companies that are involved with masks, companies that are involved with, financially involved with all these things we're seeing, and wondering why these politicians aren't standing up for us, because we're not the ones paying them. The companies that they're working for, these dirty pharmaceutical companies and all that, that is what's paying these people. That's why they could give a blatant care less about you, me, and anyone else under their constituency anymore.
Well, we can think about who the biggest funders are. In 2014, the top 100 gave as much as the bottom 4.75 million funders to congressional campaigns.
So 100 people donated as much as the bottom 4.5 million people. 100 people have the biggest say over that 4.5 million. Their money mainly funded the whole campaign. Therefore, these people would be more likely to listen to those folks opposed to you and I, who could not fund nowhere near as much as that and really thought we were helping by giving our little $2 or $3 to them. Turns out that means our voice is about as good as an ant's.
In this election cycle so far, 400 families have given half the money in the election contributions and contributions to super PACs so far. 400 families. That's not American democracy. That is banana republic democracy.
And remember, that was in 2015 when he was giving this talk. Went through a couple election cycles since then. Luckily for us, in 2016, we had a president that was at least decent at best. Now, this time around, not only did the Democrats blatantly steal the election, they did it with the help of corporate America. And if you think this is just unbased, blatant lies, I beg you to go research the Time News article where they come out and admitted proudly of everything that they did. So all these news articles claiming that they're baseless claims of election fraud, there's nothing baseless about it. They blatantly admitted it. They are becoming and have already severely become a danger to our democracy.
And then we can think not just about the biggest funders, but think about the relevant funders. Of course, the people giving millions of dollars have the attention of the members of Congress. But how much do you need to give to be relevant? How much do you need to give to matter to those Congress people as they're dialing for dollars to raise money from you.
And Larry Lessig brings up a really good point. How much money do you have to give for your voice, for your want and need for this country to become a relevant want, or something that is relevant to the representative anyway? What kind of dollar value? Is it $5? Is it 5 cents? Is it $20? As we all know, representatives are for sale, and like Tom McDonald said, you and I cannot afford them.
Well, let's take the people who maxed out in 2014. And in 2014, that means you gave $5,200 to at least one candidate.
$5,200. That's the maxed out value that you can give to a single candidate. And there was a very small number of people that did that. And it's my guess that those number of people are the ones whose needs or wants are actually going to be listened to, opposed to you, me, and everyone else listening to this program.
In the general primary and in the general election. 2014, it turns out 57,874 Americans maxed out in that way.
Which seems like a pretty big number, right?
So we could say 57,874 gave enough to matter, to control, to be the dominant force in this first stage of the election process. And then some of you out there, the math geniuses out there, beginning to do the numbers, you're thinking 57,874? Wait a minute.
Do we have any mathematicians in the audience? Have you guys already run the numbers on this? Do you have any idea how much of the American population that 57,000 actually covers?
That's 0.02% of America.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, there is that 0.02%. Again, I told you that number would be important earlier. Remember, we found that number originally because of China. Those were the number of people who were actually able to make a nomination, agreed upon a nomination for the rest of China, or Hong Kong, to vote on. 0.02%. So there's no difference between the 0.02% in China choosing who the electors or who the candidates are going to be to begin with, or the 0.02% in America funding who the candidates are going to be to begin with.
0.02% of America dominate this first stage in the process of electing the candidates who will represent us. They pick the candidates, because you can't be credible unless you get their money, and we get to vote for those candidates. This tiny fraction of the 1%, this Chinese fraction of the 1%, dominate this first stage with the consequence, obviously, of producing a democracy responsive to these funders only. This Princeton study, which is a Harvard professor I'm not allowed to talk about much, so let's get it off the stage quick, by Martin Gillens and Ben Page, the largest empirical study of actual decisions by our government in the history of political science, related the actual decisions of our government over the past 40 years with the views of the economic elite, the views of organized interest groups, and the views of the average voter.
And can anybody just take a guess at what the outcome of that is? Do you think that they actually found a direct correlation between the ones that are funding the campaigns and the bills that actually pass? Or do you think it was just no correlation at all?
And what they found was there was a nice correlation between the views of the economic elite and what our government actually did. So as you go from 0% of the elite supporting something to 100%, the probability of that proposal being passed goes up. Same thing with organized special interest groups. As the number of them supports something increases, the probability of that proposal being passed goes up. Here's the graph for the average voter. It's a flat line. Flatline, literally and figuratively. What this is saying is, as the percentage of average voters supporting a proposal goes from 0 to 100%, it doesn't change the probability that that proposal will be enacted. As they put in English, when the preferences of the economic elites and the stands of organized interest groups are controlled for, the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact on public policy in a democracy. This is true.
A democracy that is today not worth the paper that the documents founding it were written on. A democracy that has been stolen out from under the American people, we the people, and has been blatantly turned over to those with the most money. The ones that are in charge, if you will, of public policy don't give a rat's patoot about the public and what they actually want. We the people's voice has been stolen. Our democracy has been stolen, and we need to take it back. But unfortunately, speaking of taking things, we have to take a network break right here. So my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you're listening to the DarkWolf's Den Radio Show Freedom Flame series, exclusively in the home of the Freedom Flame, Rippin' Common Sense Radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. We will be right back for the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show after these messages. Don't you touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Oh, yeah, on a Thursday night, Jerry Hicks and the DarkWolf's Den Show. Hi, everyone, it's AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. Are you enjoying the show so far? I know I am. If you're enjoying a stolen democracy and you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of common sense radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. I'll return again tomorrow night, Friday, October 29th, with a look at the Quack Factory. How else do you say it? If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, sounds like a duck, it's a cat. And that's what is being produced in today's Quackery Factory. Join me again tomorrow night, Friday, October 29th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. We'll dive through that rabbit hole together. Then, an interesting Saturday night set of guests will be here. Saturday, October 30th, we're going to dive through the rabbit hole of a nation's destiny. You're going to want to pay attention. Saturday, October 30th at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as all shows do. It's going to be a very interesting exploration of the destiny of a nation. And then, of course, Sunday night, October 31st, Halloween. Come along with us as we do our second annual Ghost to Ghost. We're going to have open lines and your ability to share your ghost stories with us live on air. Halloween night, October 31st, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Also, just so that you know, after tomorrow night's show, in the backstage VIP lounge over at our website, Rippin' Rabbit Hole, that's going to be our second annual virtual Halloween costume party. We invite anyone to invite your friends, your family, heck, invite your family's friends, and join us immediately after the Quack Factory show tomorrow for our virtual Halloween costume party. Now, here's the rules. You got to come dressed. You got to have a costume on. You can have as elaborate of a costume or as minimum of a costume as you can muster. But we do encourage you and your friends and your family's friends to also come dressed in costume. I was dressed as Eugene last year. Eugene, should I go as you again this year?
My answer is no.
Okay, so I'm not going as Eugene. I'm not going as any of the costumes we talked about last Friday. I think I've got exactly how I'm going to be costumed up in the backstage VIP chat lounge. If you haven't done so, hop on over to rippinrabbithole.com and sign up for that exclusive free backstage VIP pass. We'll return back to Jerry Hicks's Freedom Flame series with the DarkWolf's Den Radio Show, A Stolen Democracy, for Thursday, October 28th. You're listening to the Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole.
Can do brighter day for me and you. The best part of waking up.
The best part of waking up is having a job. And that is exactly what the hardworking men and women at J.M. Smucker Co. who bring you Folgers coffee won't have if they don't get the jab. Hey, Smuckers, consumers are now boycotting your 40 brands. Call 1-888-550-9555 and tell them everyone should have the freedom of choice.
Reestablishing multiverse connection. Connection reestablished and secure.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to DarkWolf's Den.
The DarkWolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, October the 28th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in tonight, we are discussing the stolen democracy in which we live in this brand new episode of the brand new Freedom Flame series. A series that is going to become more and more important as we go. This is basically just an overview today of the problem, one of the main problems that we have in our, quote, democracy is the fact that our, quote, democracy has been blatantly stolen from us, not only in the 2020 elections, but for a long time now. That just happens to be the last and most blatant example that we have. And make no mistake, that was stolen, point blank. And I will not stop saying it. To stop saying something like that would be a danger to the democracy, what little of it we have left, right, ladies and gentlemen? But let us get back to our guest, Mr. Larry Lessig, as he continues to discuss the stolen democracy that we have and the way that we could possibly find a way to enact things to fix it. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, I do not offer complaint without in the end offering a type of solution, and we'll get to that here in just a moment, but let's continue on. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Lessig.
All right, so here's the picture that we were told of our democracy. There we were, citizens driving the bus. But here's the reality. The reality is the steering wheel has become detached from this bus. We don't drive the bus anymore. We do not anecdotally, in the most aggressive empirical analysis, have no relationship to what our government does. This is a product of tweedism.
And yes, without question, our democracy has definitely been taken over by tweedism.
And what tweedism is first corruption. It's a corruption of the design of our representative democracy.
And I'm not sure how clear people could see it in 2015, but in today's society, it's very easy to see the amount of corruption that is taken over and is running things now.
When Madison gave us our representative democracy, he described it in Federalist 52 to be a system that would have a branch, Congress, that would be, quote, dependent on the people alone. An exclusive dependence.
That might be how it started and how it was meant to be, but that is definitely not how it's going.
But that's not our Congress. They're dependent on the people and dependent on the tweeds.
And I would say more dependent on the tweeds than the people at all at this point.
And then to go on, to clarify, Madison in Federalist 57 said, by the people, he means, quote, not the rich more than the poor. Not the rich more than the poor. But that's not our reality. The people today mean not the rich more than the poor, except for the tweeds. The tweeds have more power than the middle class and the poor. This is corruption. It's not criminals.
And that's where me and Larry 100% disagree, is that it's not the criminals. It's very much the criminals. At this point, I would call almost every single member of Congress a criminal, whether Senate or House.
It's a system in which decent people who come to this city to do the right thing find themselves bent to do the thing the tweeds demand, because that's the only way you can survive. It is corruption.
And how do we allow such corruption to take over our system?
But it is caused by a basic inequality that we've allowed to evolve inside of our representative system, an inequality.
An equality that perhaps at some fundamental level we were aware of, but an inequality that has grown and grown and grown into more of a precedent than an accident. And it kind of reminds me of the old book, The Animal Farm. You guys remember having to read that in school? That's exactly what this reminds me of, specifically one line from The Animal Farm. You guys know which line I'm talking about? How about you, Mr. Larry Lessig? What line am I talking about, sir?
Remember Orwell's all animals are created equal, and what we've got here, all animals are created equal, but the tweeds are more equal than others.
All animals are created equal, but some animals are created more equal than others. Well, into modern society, all people are created equal, but the tweeds are just a little more equal because they're the money funders. They're the ones that are deciding the policies that you and I have to live by, no matter how egregious or absolutely ridiculous they may be.
It is inequality. But what's critical about recognizing that it's inequality is if we could remove the inequality, if we could address that fundamental inequality in this representative democracy, if we could neutralize this tweedism, then we could crack the corruption that makes it impossible for our government to do any of the things we want our government to do. We could achieve a system dependent on the people alone, because only the people would be having the influence inside that government. It would be a system where not the rich more than the poor were the people, because everyone would, because of this equality, have the capacity to press the government in the direction they want the government pressed. Equality. I'm not talking about wealth equality. That's important to worry about too. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the equality we have as citizens. Now, to get that, what I've been arguing we need to talk about is a statute.
And this is why it becomes incredibly important to become involved in this dirty system, not by becoming a representative or trying to do what's right or putting yourself in a position to where you'll be tempted once again to become just like the enemy you're fighting. No, you get involved as a citizen who wants to see change. We have as much right to introduce a bill into Congress as Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer or any other of these the wackadoos that are running things right now. As Americans, we have every right to introduce bills that could limit their power. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, fine, even if we do, it's not like they're going to agree to it, right? Well, not necessarily. As we're going to find when we go through this series, there are some ways that we can get involved that will and are going to make a difference in this country. You have a voice. Do not make that mistake. You have a voice as a citizen. I know we've talked a lot about how corrupted the system is so far, but don't think that your voice isn't just as important as mine and more important than any of those guys sitting in Washington right now.
The Congress ought to pass tomorrow statute, let's call it the Citizen Equality Act.
And for the first time in the last 20 years, it will be an act named after something it actually means instead of this government doublespeak we hear all the time. Like the Patriot Act, that was the most anti-patriot thing they've done.
And what the Citizen Equality Act does first is it changed the way campaigns are funded, to make it so that instead of this green primary, we have a money primary, but citizens are funding these campaigns as much as anyone else. The money comes from all of us through proposals like the American Anti-Corruption Act or John Sarbanes' Government by the People Act that would provide small dollar public funding to fund congressional campaigns so that they wouldn't be dependent on this tiny few to fund their campaigns. That's the critical first dimension of equality we ought to insert back into this representative democracy. And there's other inequalities inside of our system. We need equal representation inside of our system.
And Chris Spivey, welcome over in the DarkWolf's Den Show chat, as well as Jack D. Whiskey. And you bring up a good point over here. Just like people calling it equity and not equality. And yeah, when I seen that start to become a buzzword around, it wasn't hard to see how they were playing with language and hoping people would see equality in equity. Equity means money. You are equatable to something, which is always and always a dangerous path to go down. There are certain parts of this country's history I would rather not repeat. I don't know about you guys.
This article, this fantastic article written by Christopher Ingraham for the Washington Post, graphs these gerrymandered districts in the United States. These are congressional districts in the United States. Here's my favorite example of this. You can see the natural community that bonds these people together here. This is a system. They said it's crimes against geography. That's kind of a nice way of putting it. But this is a system where the politicians are picking the voters. The voters aren't picking the politicians, and they pick the voters to create safe seats. Democrats and Republicans both play this game. So in our Congress today, 90 seats are competitive.
And let's be very, very clear. This is not about one party or the other. I know I have ragged on the current party in control, or think they're in control, for lack of a better word. We know old Dementia Joe's not very much in control of anything, but just to say, this is not about party lines. This is about what needs to happen, and they play these dirty games across the board. Just because you are a Democrat, you think only the Republicans are cheating, or just because you're a Republican, you think only the Democrats are cheating. Well, guess what? They're cheating each other, and they're cheating themselves. They're all doing it. Libertarians, it doesn't matter your title you sling onto it. If you're in politics, you're probably cheating.
Which means 345 seats are these safe seats, which means if you're a minority party in each of these 345 seats, you don't matter to the representative, because the representative knows he or she doesn't need you, which means 89 million Americans are not represented in this system because we structured this in a way that makes sure that these people don't count. That's inequality. And Fair Vote has a proposal which is incorporated in the Citizen Equality Act to radically change the way we make these districts work so that we have proportional, fair representation across the country.
And like he said, it is literally a backwards system. You have the representatives picking their voters instead of their voters picking their representative. And at that point, it's kind of like the magician's decision. You didn't really have a choice. You had the illusion of a choice. And just like the rigged up Tweed system, it is again not a choice, but a illusion of choice. And there's one more part of this act which I gotta say, I'm kind of a fan of this part of the idea.
Finally, an equal freedom to vote. The absurd ways in which we make it hard for people to vote, and it's not accidental how we make it hard for people to vote. In the last election, 10 million people had to wait more than 30 minutes to vote, which for people with nannies and iPhones might not seem like a bad thing, but if you're a working family who can't afford that kind of support, that's a poll tax that's too high for too many. And of course,
and that's completely understandable. In this day and age, not everybody has the ability to go and vote, right? Even if you've got the ability, do you have the time? Do you have time to stand in line for 2 hours, for an hour? He said a half hour. It's much longer now, I'm sure, just to get your vote in. And as important as it is, you still got to get dinner done. You've got kids, you're at school. You might not even have a chance to get to work, or you've got to get to work, or it won't be open after work, or to the average citizen, I can see where a lot of these issues come in, regardless of race, gender, or any other descriptor.
As the Brennan Center found in a study that they made of this poll tax is correlated strongly with race. It's racially correlated in the sense that where there are black or brown districts, they're less likely to have the resources necessary to make it possible to vote easily. That, of course, I think is more directly correlated with party, which leads to many proposals incorporated in the Citizen Equality Act, including the Voting Rights Advancement Act that would attack some of these provisions that make it hard for people to vote, and Bernie Sanders' suggestion of Democracy Day, where we move voting to a holiday so working people can vote just as easily as those who don't have to.
Now, the Fair Voting Act, as far as putting it on a holiday, I think that's great, but you shouldn't put it on a holiday. We should make it a holiday. Voting day should be a holiday. Then you've got no excuse why you could not find the time to go vote sometime in the day. And I think we should make it a 2-day holiday, not a 1-day holiday. We shouldn't be restrictive in that little 24-hour vote zone. I know you can vote anytime, but the majority goes the day of voting. So let's make the day of voting a multi-day session. And we also need to, square down on the blatant problem with the voting issues, but we don't even have enough time to start to touch on that tonight. But I do think it's a good idea to make voting days holidays. What are we going to do? I mean, there's certain days already that should be holidays that are not, 9/11, for instance. So why would voting day be any different? Unless, of course, you're trying to rig the elections.
So these three ideas get wrapped into one statute, a statute Congress could pass tomorrow to achieve this equality.
I would add in one thing to his act, and I think it would be complete. And that one thing would be term limits. If we took the amount of time they were in office and made it where it was only 2 or 4 years maximum, maybe 8 years, 2 president terms, why not? Then you don't have a loyalty anywhere, you can't work in public service or government again, and you have to do something else. Point blank, period. I think that would also help, and there's so much more to tackle and so little time to get there. And we will be continuing to tackle these and many other important topics when it comes to our rights, liberties, and freedoms here in this country on the Freedom Flame series presented exclusively on the Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys know that music means the end of the show, unfortunately, so I guess at the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, apply a little common sense, and
you be the judge.
That's right, boys. We got to close it out. That's right. That's it for this episode of the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, October the 28th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing, but don't you worry. The weekend fun has only just begun. That's right. Make sure you come back tomorrow, Friday, October 29th, 2021. On the Rippin' Rabbit Hole YouTube channel, rippinrabbithole.com, and Rippin' Common Sense Radio, for our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit to take back to the airwaves with an all-new episode once again of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show, and he's going to be discussing tomorrow night the quack factory that is this society. Like AJ said, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it is definitely a squirrel. Absolutely, 100% hands down, it's a squirrel. And that's the quackery that is our modern times. And he'll be discussing all that and more tomorrow, Friday, October 29th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. All shows here on the network start at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then on Saturday, again, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. What I tell you, he will be back with another episode of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show. That's right, he's going to be talking about the nation's destiny tomorrow night, and a destiny indeed that we all help shape, right? What kind of influences are on that? And he'll be having a special guest with him. Definitely check that out. I am absolutely super excited for that episode. Then on Sunday, October 31st, 2021. That's right, it is the annual Halloween special, where he'll be doing Ghost to Ghost, once again in honor of the late, great Art Bell, right? Ghost to Ghost is always a fun show, and if you missed last year's version of it, definitely check this one out. You will enjoy it, that I guarantee. And that is going to close out the weekend here at Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. And we hope that you guys also come back on Tuesday. That's right, the first weekend of the month, or the first Tuesday of the month. Every month, November 2nd, will be the TNV in the Backstage Lounge. And speaking of the Backstage Lounge, if you're wondering how to get there, we would love to see you back playing Tuesday night video trivia. It happens once a month, first Tuesday of every month, always a themed show. CSN, I'm sure, or Raider Champion, I'm sorry, go ahead and drop that title into the chat there. Let us know what the theme is going to be for this month. And it is always fun. I have a blast. I rarely win. I won one time. But I have a blast. Sandy B is the champion, reigning champion over there, so maybe you can take the belt away from her and put her, back down a couple levels. Give somebody else a chance to win the TNV. Maybe that'll be you. But in order to do that, you have to go over and log on to the rippinrabbithole.com. That is RIPON, That's right. Over there, you're going to find the Backstage 24/7 Lounge. First thing you're going to have to do is sign up for the VIP pass. That is absolutely free, always free, and you will receive an email once a week, every week on Wednesday, with all the DarkWolf's Den shows and Rippin' Rabbit Holes we'll be doing all weekend long. Also, once you've got that Backstage pass in hand, you can go to the Backstage 24/7 Lounge next Tuesday and join the Tuesday night videos. But while you're waiting for that, there's also the best part of the site, in my opinion, Down the Rabbit Hole. That's our exclusive social media section over there. And make sure you definitely drop down there and give us some information. If there's stuff you want to share that the fake social media sites will ban and get you for, we won't punish you at all. Bring the information over here. We would love to see it. Also, ladies and gentlemen, you can always check our front page for updated and breaking news. If there's something going on, you can guarantee we have got some stories over there about it, ladies and gentlemen. With that said, we have to get out here for this weekend. So my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. You've been listening to the Darkwolf's Den Radio Show exclusively on Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. On behalf of AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walt House, Tom McDonald. We really appreciate him letting us use that music in our show this evening, as well as everybody that has been involved in Rippin' Common Sense Radio, and our great friend Tom Bayless here. A bunch of Toms doing music, right? Get down with that music, Tom. Here's one time. If you're looking for a custom soundtrack for your next project, check out Red Shed Studios. Links in the description. On behalf of all these folks, ladies and gentlemen, once again, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next time, stay awake, but dare to dream. That's right. How? Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Unlocked and into the dark. things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever
What, you think I wouldn't do it on an episode like this? Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. FJB. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. FJB. That's right. Let's go, Brandon.
What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays.
Let's go, Brandon. FJB. Let's go, Brandon. FJB.
What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner.
FJB.
Is it in her?
Let's go, Brandon. FJB. Let's go, Brandon. I wonder if he was saddened when he found out he wasn't really screaming his name, right?
Just illusion, manifestation, or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Let's go, Brandon. That's right, FJB. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Oh, he knew. FJB. Let's go, Brandon. FJB. See, every time Joe Biden sneezes like that, his brains fall out a little more. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, if you learn nothing else from me ever, remember that you do have a voice. Stand for your rights. Always stand for what's right. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, happy Halloween. Be safe. Have fun. Collect a lot of candy. And I'll see you guys.